Okay, so where am I? Welcome everyone to the November virtual membership meeting of the West Seattle Transportation Coalition. My name is Michael Taylor Judd, and I'm your chair of the coalition. Tonight's agenda, we'll do a couple of minutes of quick business. We will get into our first guest, Mike Lindblom, with who's the Seattle Times transportation reporter. We're just going to sort of have a little bit of a look back at the big stories this year. And he's with us a short period of time before he scoots out. And then around 7:10, 7:15, we are going to turn the conversation over to Sound Transit and chat about West Seattle Link Extension station area planning, what you missed if you weren't able to attend the big community meeting they held last month at Alki Masonic Hall. There are links here, and they will appear again later if you haven't been with us before, on where you can find more information, and then we'll look to be wrapped by 8:30 as usual. If you've not been with us before, the purpose of the West Seattle Transportation Coalition is to be a peninsula-wide organization. We work to address transportation and commuting challenges for the nearly 100,000 people who live and work on the West Seattle Peninsula. And we do this through things such as securing support of residents, engaging elected officials at all levels, partnering with government agencies to achieve best outcomes in education, like we're doing this evening. We also like to engage with businesses, community organizations, neighborhood groups, and individuals as part of educating and collecting feedback, which I feel like we're also doing tonight. Our goals are affordable and equitable transportation options, particularly in historically underserved neighborhoods, a transportation network that moves people and goods in an environmentally sustainable manner, investments in transportation infrastructure to match Seattle's growth. Our priorities here in 2023 have involved supporting Sound Transit 3 planning and education and outreach, like we're doing tonight, monitoring the SR 160 Fauntleroy Ferry Terminal trestle and span replacement project. We've been keeping an eye for a while on the West Marginal Way Southwest Safety Corridor project and projected bike lane, which as folks know, was implemented this year. We were going to have Sarah Zora from SDOT with us this evening, but there's been a little bit of delays in pulling together data and things. So we were hoping to have her at our first meeting in 2024 in January. So look forward to that. We're hoping to reach out to King County Metro to really look at sort of getting our hands dirty around bus route planning again as we head into 2024. And then everybody know, we haven't really been talking much about it because it's not launched yet, but we're really excited to look at how the Move Seattle Levy renewal planning comes together, and that's kicking off right now over on the city side. They're pulling their folks together and getting their expert team ready to go, and so hopefully we will be hearing more and more about that, as well as some of the feedback they heard from the Seattle Transportation Plan draft outreach that they were doing recently here in West Seattle. I will direct people over to the chat, which should be active for everybody. Yes. And ask folks, just introduce yourselves and let us know who's kind of, in the space with us, your name, your pronouns, any access needs you have, what neighborhood you're from here, if you're here in West Seattle. And then, if you want to add a little bit into our check-in question. This month we came up with what is your preferred mode of transportation for viewing holiday light displays this time of year? Do you like to hop on your bike with your kids? Do you like to go for walks in different neighborhoods? Do you drive? Do you like to be out in the boats? Either watching boats lit up and various things that happen around the area, or maybe sailing around and looking at lights on land from the water. Whatever is your slice of life, drop it in there. And if this is your first time with us and you didn't receive a reminder by email, you can be added to the email list. I'm not sure if John is with us, but so you're welcome to send it. You can switch there in the chat if you've not done it before, and you can send a private chat message to me with your email address, and we'll make sure you get added. Unless John has joined us, and you'll see him there. But if not, just send it over to me. And with that, quick bit of board business. We have meeting minutes to approve from September. Hopefully other board members saw them in our board email from Kate. I know I did. And if folks want to know more about our past meetings, we do upload to a YouTube channel, which has this kind of ugly address there, as well as a lot of our meetings go out to live to Facebook, and you can view the videos there as well. I would entertain a motion to approve previous meeting minutes for September.
So move.
Is there a second?
Second, Larry.
All right, thank you, Deb. Thank you, Larry. Board members, all those in favor, please say aye.
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 Any opposed? I think that was everyone, but any abstentions? All right, so minutes carry. And then really quickly, thought I would steal a photo from the SDOT blog like I like to do. If folks have not had a chance to get up to Highland Parkway, there's this lovely public artwork that was recently installed there. You can learn more about it by going to their November 9th blog post. The address is up there at the top, or just go to the SDOT blog and do a search for really for Highland Park, and it should be the most recent one that comes up. And with that, we will start with our first guest of the evening. Once again, a chat with Mike Lindblom at the Seattle Times, who writes staff reporter who writes on a lot of different transportation issues. I don't know what happened, Mike. I actually had a link to how people could, type and find all of the articles that you are a part of on Seattle Times, and then I apparently seem to have accidentally deleted it. But if folks go to the Seattle Times website, if you aren't aware, you can type reporters' names into the search, and it'll pull up a search page for you of just all the articles that they're involved with. So Mike, welcome aboard.
Hi, Michael.
Pulled together a couple of headlines here from some stories that popped up this year, but we could talk about
3 headlines or more than
more.
Okay. Yeah, great. Well, I think maybe the story of the year is that Steller's Jay in Highland Park. I need to check that out. Maybe replace the goldfinch as the state bird, because certainly in my house, Steller's Jay are competing with crows for supremacy. So that's awesome. Thanks, Michael. Okay, in the West Seattle, the light rail path with Sound Transit's representatives here, by the end of the night, everybody will know everything in that article anyway, so might not need to do any searching. What would you like to hear about, Michael?
I mean, we can just chat. I mean, I suppose to start off with, I pulled a couple here, 3 headlines, but, suppose talk about what's your view as a reporter who's, if folks are not aware, lives here in West Seattle with all of us. So sort of what's your view from up above, like we've got with that beautiful picture on the light rail story on the left. What's been fun to report on, what's been surprising, what do you think's coming at us next year that we all should be paying attention to?
Well, yeah, of these 3 stories, the most fun is probably the road ramp breakdown. There's a steel company down below, and the folks welcomed me into their property. There's been at least 4 major breakdowns in that ramp. It was built in the 1950s in conjunction with the Alaskan Way Viaduct, and you can see there that it's just kind of a mesh netting. And when they patch this thing, they're replicating the same mesh, the same kind of mesh that was there before. They're not adding a bunch of structural steel or beams there. So more likely than not, these will happen once every few years. And the concrete trucks, the buses are going over there at weights that nobody imagined 70 years ago. So that's quite a story in itself. And the swing bridge reopens 4 days early. I think there might be one or two people in this group that have been inside those pivots where the bridge swings. And it's said to be the only one of its kind in the world that it raises a few inches using hydraulic cylinders, and it spins a little bit. Actually, it spins about 90 degrees, and there's really tight quarters, really tight confines to get parts in and out. Fortunately, Seattle DOT has learned from past problems, and they keep a spare, and they were able to exchange it 4 days early because they had done one last winter and gotten some practice with it. So that was a really nice accomplishment for them. This bridge, by the way, had some structural cracking in it about the same time the high bridge cracked, but they were able to fix it without large amounts of steel being added in. So hopefully it will be, a year from now, it'll be in good shape for another few decades. With light rail, the light rail path, it's coming together, at least as far as the politics and in general the route. It's coming together. My impression, hanging around for an hour in the Alki Masonic Lodge, looking at these designs, is that the shapes, the orientations, directions of the station look like they've kind of evolved into where they're going to be, or at least a pretty good alignment. Sound Transit, as everybody here knows, is on a path to displace a child care center, the Alki Beach Academy, that is near the steel mill. And even if they wanted to give them a really hefty buyout and moving expenses, they're constrained a lot by state law. There's a state constitutional ban on gifts of public funds. This is construed pretty narrowly, so that it's very hard to provide tenants with enough compensation to just simply move. So it's not clear yet how that's all going to turn out, but from a transit planning point of view, it makes total sense to tear down that office park and put a station there. The greater theme in this story is that there's a lot of sacrifice involved, everywhere from $4 billion to some of the community impacts, homes near Avalon Way that are going to be near construction and excavation and aerial trackways. And if you're going to do that, it makes sense to put as many riders and as much housing around the stations as possible. There aren't very many places, maybe none, except for San Jose, that would build a $4 billion line to upgrade 27,000 bus riders to trains. And for some, it's not even an upgrade. Some people would just prefer to stay on the H line and then get out and transfer to a train at Delridge. But assuming that the rail is good for everybody, that's a massive amount of money for a pretty small amount of ridership. So folks in West Seattle shouldn't be surprised, and maybe should even be encouraging much greater amounts of housing at these station sites than what we see today, even with 7-story buildings gradually replacing old retail shops.
You, or I guess really the Times, have you given any thought to I mean, we sort of assume sometimes, I think, or certainly we wish at the coalition that everybody was as into transportation as we are, and knows all, how these things work, or has been in other cities that have light rail or subways or different things like that. But unfortunately, that's not the reality. Have you guys given any thought to putting something together that would sort of spotlight, like you mentioned San Jose, or looking at Boston, looking at New York, like, looking at some other systems and looking at sort of how did they build out new lines? What effects did that have on, density, on development, on affordability, on that sort of stuff, to try and sort of help people get a better sense of how Seattle's going to change, hopefully for the better, maybe in some ways, in more challenging. Any thoughts on that, or ways to get people sort of better educated on that side?
I would say don't hold your breath. The last time I wrote that sort of a story was in 2002, with a lot of comparisons to St. Louis. You're talking about an undertaking that professionals in New York do and will work on it full time for 6 months or a year. There are some studies. There's a transit costs project through New York University. There's Enotrans. There's a little bit of overlap between those guys and a group that's advising the Sound Transit Board. But you're talking about a massive effort that is rarely, if ever, done anywhere in the world to compare costs and benefits of all the transit systems with each other. The best thing that we've done recently along those lines was David Gutman, who used to be in Traffic Lab. He went to Vancouver, wrote a couple stories, and one of them was about how they really do a great job of coordinating their housing with their transit stations. And the other one was about how rapidly they built out bike lanes after some initial resistance, but now their bike mode share exceeds 10% in the city of Vancouver. And that kind of comparison, one-to-one comparisons, are really great and something we can and should be doing a lot more of. I don't think you're gonna see us do, barnstorm around the country or, go to Europe. I mean, there are business and government officials here who go to Amsterdam, come back and talk about how great it is, and then do hardly ever of their stuff. So that's the play, is to somehow find time and money to go compare with one or two peer cities.
Well, you mentioned some
see
great articles that were done on Vancouver, which being very familiar with Vancouver system, I was really happy to see.
Right.
If folks want to, if transportation interested folks want to go up and check out Metrotown along the SkyTrain, that's quite an interesting look at how development happened and completely changed an area that had almost nothing before. You think we could get the Times to pay at least for an Amtrak ticket and maybe send you down to Portland and look at Max and how that operates, and some of the expansion they did down there and how that affected development?
Yeah, that's a possibility, although Seattle is outperforming Portland in public transportation for a lot of reasons that probably don't need to elaborate too much upon here, but our ridership is quite a bit stronger than theirs. They have some features that Seattle doesn't have that are interesting, such as the Tillicum Bridge, which is transit, walk and bike, and the OHSU I guess it's a gondola. The gondola goes up from the waterfront into the medical center. So those are some things. Yeah, I mean, those are things Portland has that are worth looking at. Yeah, I think returning to Vancouver might be a great idea, since they are constructing new lines to Surrey and to University of British Columbia. So that's worthwhile. A review of Amtrak Cascades would be worthwhile, just because the train service is expanding and adding routes post-pandemic.
I mean, the more you got, you may not have lots of funding, but you've got way more funding to promote things than we do at the coalition. So
well,
we just have to lean on any contacts we have with groups elsewhere to pull guests and information.
Traffic Lab has either 1 or 0 funders right now. We're not yeah, we're not really a lab like the others. We have two reporters and we're constantly on the go. It would be nice if everybody caught up on maintenance. That would free up a lot of time for us to take a broader look at things. But rather than make more excuses, I will say that we have an interesting big picture story coming up about concrete and CO2, which I think people here will find interesting. It's the amount of carbon emitted by highway projects and transit tunnels is tremendous and takes years, can even take decades to pay off in climate benefit. And it's not an issue. Very few people are really up to speed on that. And Sound Transit is actually tracking it and calculating it now, but they're just kind of in the early stages of doing it. And anyway.
Sounds like something good to keep an eye out for.
Yeah, I mean, it
You mind
would. Yeah, go ahead.
Yeah, I know that there are a lot of lower carbon concrete options being dreamed up. I don't know if they're on the horizon or dreams or imminent at this point. Is that something that the article will go into?
That's exactly what we're looking at.
Yeah.
And I've been researching it off and on since April. It may show up pretty soon.
Cool.
Hopefully.
Thanks.
In the case of Sound Transit 3, these calculations, and I don't totally trust them because they're based on generic federal models, but they show tunnels using 35 times as much concrete or CO2 or more than building on surface, and many times more than building overhead. I don't really think that those metrics are going to influence what elected officials on the board ever decide to do, but it's a talking point for anti-rail groups, and it's shown up a little bit in West Seattle.
And I'll toss one more question at you, and then we can open up for some Q&A. But one of the things I didn't pull into sort of the little collage here, there's been lots of stories and talk this year about the state of the ferry system. And I know it's been a while since we've had Washington State Ferries out as a guest speaker. What are you seeing there in terms of the little bit of opening up to where we can get more boats built, but we're still pretty hamstrung by, what is it, the Bacon Act, I think. But how do you think things are shaping up there in terms of getting new boats and getting staffing? Are we really looking at this ongoing struggle for years, or do you think the state's starting to pull something together?
No, you're looking at an ongoing struggle for years. The state is recruiting, but since a year or two ago, the boats have deteriorated to the point where staffing is less of a problem than boat shortages and boat failures. So the Wenatchee is out for conversion to hybrid. When that comes back, it'll be helpful. Be a year from now at least. But they're having boat breakdowns frequently. I think there were 3 or 4 of them at Harbor Island when our photographer went out a few days ago. She was just exploring the Duwamish River and found all these boats in dry dock. There's not a quick fix for that. Fauntleroy, if Fauntleroy, Vashon, Southworth have 2 boats running, that makes them one of the better equipped routes in the state. I went to the peninsula a couple weeks ago and waited instead of waiting 5 minutes. The last year when I went there, I waited 80 minutes in one direction and 120 minutes in the other to get on a boat because they were only running one. So anyway, I don't see the ferry system changing very much for 3 or 4 years.
It's too bad. There's some great new boats that are starting to that are in the queue to come into Vancouver to our north.
Yeah, well, there's a whole,
because they're able to go around the world and get some crazy, interesting new designs. So
yeah, a long time ago, there was an argument and debate led by Republicans in the legislature that Washington State's costs were too high, and was there some other way to get ferries built cheaper? They hired consultants, researched it, had a hearing or two, and decided, no, we really don't want to ship jobs out of Washington State. We'll pay more, and that was, and then that was that for a few more years. They were very late in. Well, they didn't. Yeah, they've just had a hard time getting bidders, and Vigor. This was really well explained in an article by my colleague David Croman. You know, the governor and Vigor celebrated their deal to build boats, and then Vigor chose not to move forward with it at a price that WashDOT was able to pay or willing to pay. So they've lost. The years that they lose on that mean that every single boat in the fleet ages longer without being swapped out for major maintenance or replacement. So that whole the replacement boats that were already approved, as well as the hybrid conversions, when those slip, the whole system bogs down.
that's all I've got. We've got what, about 10, 15 minutes. If folks want to, not sure if things have switched around in terms of how to raise your hand. If folks want to raise their hand to ask a question, or if you want to drop questions into the chat. My co-host Kate Wells will keep an eye on the chat, hopefully, for us. I see a hand there from Larry. Take it away, Larry. You should be able to unmute yourself now. Still muted, Larry.
Sorry about that. Mike, thanks for coming today. It's good to have you here. I know you talked to quite a few people, so I'm kind of curious maybe of your perspective on this. I'm kind of noticing we're only 13 months from being a quarter of the way through the century, and I keep looking out maybe 2050, 2075. And I'm a traffic engineer and kind of very curious of how different traffic is going to be in the future. So I was kind of wondering if you've kind of had some interesting conversations or anybody with people really looking out into the future and kind of maybe seeing some big changes, big challenges, things like that, kind of way out in the future for Seattle that maybe you'd like to share with us.
I was really interested in those questions last decade, but I think it's pretty clear now that autonomous vehicles are not going to be in widespread use anytime soon. I'd like to see, and I know this is happening in other places, more experiments and conversions with things like trucks around the waterfront, maybe going on pre-programmed limited routes, electrified, autonomous, burning a lot less diesel fuel, not causing as many traffic backups. The 2075 is so far out. I mean, climate-wise, our goose is going to be cooked way before then if climate is your issue. 2050 is, Sound Transit is, they're looking at 2041 to get to Ballard, 2044 or something for Everett. Their finance plan is to 2046 with $28 billion still to pay. My main worry personally, just traveling around, is that lawlessness, reckless, and dangerous driving is completely out of control, and in the next 5 years or so, a lot of the road system will become unusable for quite a few people. I've already cut back on bicycling, except within West Seattle, because there's just too many knuckleheads out there doing things like running into the side of a bus and knocking into the sidewalk in Belltown. That's the most immediate problem I see out there that really needs some action. futuristically, we could wind up with an economy where fewer people can afford personal vehicles. We will probably have more transit, whether or not Sound Transit 3 goes off well, or whether we acquire buses. But a lot of our road system is going to be unpassable for all users unless we get a handle on dangerous driving, dangerous conditions, safer road designs. AVs, AVs are helpful in that they promote safety technology such as some braking assist and things like that. But I don't see a great revolution happening with automation making life a lot better for all of us very soon. But my time horizon is 20 more years to live, which puts me around the early 2040s. And anything past that is so speculative that I'm just having a hard time grasping it. But people here probably have a better informed impression. What do you guys think 2050 will be like?
Will we have an I-5 is a big question.
Oh yeah, okay.
Major infrastructure.
There's a question you can get your arms around. I mean, there's a good chance that we'll have more lids and walk bike bridges. The federal government, at least Democratic federal governments seem to be willing to consider donating to that. So that's a really interesting point. Will I-5 be massively transformed either? I don't see any momentum to eliminate I-5, but it's reasonable to think that it's not going to get any larger and could be lidded for a few miles within the city.
So we do
Phil
have
has his hand up.
Oh, go. Oh, I'm sorry. Couldn't see that. Okay, Phil.
Hi. Say, I want to get back to the ferries for just a minute. I'm confused about the backstory with Vigor being the sole contractor in the Washington State, and has that changed, or there seems to be a real roadblock there?
Yeah, the Washington State Ferries resubmitted their request for bids, and the David Croman story from a few weeks ago is the best source I know of for information on that. But boat construction is being open to a lot of other bidders besides Vigor, and I don't know yet who's gonna win that. There may be some requirements to have a certain amount of construction done here. I think WashDOT was, at least for a while, they were requiring that bidders establish some kind of workforce locally, and they wanted somebody with maybe that would include a local partner to build boats on Puget Sound. And there may be people in here that have followed it more closely than I have, but the idea was to have bidders from around the country who include local partners.
I think I dropped the right link to the story into the chat.
Okay. We should
And
find out something positive.
Anybody who can't read the chat or is watching in a video later, it was well, I'll get the date here in a second.
Yeah, we should talk about a couple positive things for a minute. Michael,
Yes.
Michael posted on the slide, you mentioned the West Marginal Way bike lane. That was done. That was built for. It was in my story. Some not very expensive. Thousands rather than millions. And well, thanks, John, for popping that in. Yeah, that's. Yeah, Vigor's own management and ownership changed.
Yeah. And
Really
the
important.
date on the David Croman story, if people want to look it up in the Times, was October 10th, 2023.
Okay, so yeah, the West March Way bike lane, I've used it a few times. Works great. Big improvement compared to biking on the sidewalk and then kind of nudging your shoulders around whatever pedestrians are there. It's not getting a whole lot of use, but I did see 2 commuters using it in near freezing temperatures the other night, in early evening, and it's something that can grow. It can grow over the long run, and having that lane there is not really hampering any other users. It's slowing down some of the traffic, which benefits people going to and from the Duwamish Longhouse. So seemed like a good improvement so far.
Yeah, I didn't ask.
And the High
Sarah if she
Bridge,
has usage today,
you know,
but-
the High Bridge reopened last fall. Its traffic is coming back. I don't think it's quite as thick as pre-pandemic, but its traffic is pretty heavy, which both means the bridge is useful and also means that we're driving too much. But as far as I know, it's holding up pretty well, and that decision by Mayor Durkin is standing the test of time so far compared to the alternative of trying to demolish the old bridge and build a new one.
So I'm curious if you see a lot of changes at SDOT. It seems like a lot of things have happened, like the West Marginal Way bike lane, the missing link maybe finally getting filled. A lot of, I don't know, I see a renewed push for safety projects, bike projects, pedestrian. I don't know, do you see that there's a difference at SDOT these days?
Greg Spots, the director appointed by Mayor Harrell, is a huge proponent of bike lanes, and even was hanging around Green Lake when this very small bike lane was put on the west side of the lake, the divided bike lane. I mean, removing one lane from Aurora through the lake is, I mean, it's un-American, right? I mean, in kind of a good way. That was an area, you know, I got my driver's license in 1978. People were going 50 miles an hour through there all the time. Now they're, you know, going 40, and the zone is transitions from 40 to 30. But doing that was a big accomplishment. But that effort started before Spots, and predecessor Sam Zimbabwe, who lives in West Seattle, had a pretty much equal or similar enthusiasm for walk, bike, and road safety. I don't know that the change of administrations made much difference one way or the other as to how fast SDOT moves on these projects. They're still kind of dragging along on the northern part of Aurora. The safety projects out there are not moving very fast. One of the legislators, Reuven Carlisle, specifically steered $50 million toward the 105th area to try to circumvent Seattle DOT's outreach, their process, and their goal of trying to do a holistic Aurora instead of spots on Aurora. And there are pros and cons to how SDOT is doing things. You know, we had one of our stories was about how private philanthropy, I think the ex-wives of Melinda French Gates and
Is it Mackenzie Scott?
Mackenzie Scott. They donated money, and that got things moving to build a better waterfront bike lane that extends into the park. So I don't see a particular pattern that the new administration changed things a lot. Projects are just kind of gradually coming around, maybe nowhere near the speed that the supporters would like.
So there is one question in the chat. You're not exactly a decision maker at Sound Transit, but I'm going to pose this one to you. Think of it maybe in terms of story ideas or your opinions on this. When light rail opens in West Seattle, Sound Transit will have spent more than $264,000 per rider, and in the first year, the cost will drop to about $600 per rider. Metro Transit will cancel a bus route if it costs more than $7 per rider. It goes into Sound Transit's carbon footprint. And so if better transit options are available, why aren't we using them instead of building Ballard to West Seattle light rail? Like, use buses instead of instead of light rail, that sort of thing.
Yeah, yeah, to do that, voters have approved 3 waves of Sound Transit taxes, one of which is or may be the highest ever local tax increase passed by voters in the United States, ST3. That's a big picture politically, and there's a lot of prestige in delivering light rail projects instead of bus projects, and enough people have had enough slow or unpleasant experiences on buses that folks, there's a preference for rail, and right now light rail has been increasing its ridership since the pandemic more consistently than buses have. West Seattle has a wishbone shape that makes rail kind of problematic. We talked about that earlier. Half Delridge and the Avalon Alaska Junction corridors serve about the same number of bus users, but they're split, and you can't hit all of them on one transit line. That's a dilemma for West Seattle. So these numbers, I haven't personally verified these numbers about 264,000 per rider. To do that kind of a number, the Federal Transit Administration used to take the total ridership expected, multiply it by 30 over 30 years, and then compare that to the capital costs. They don't use that method anymore, but it's not a bad way to look at things in general. I've kind of, in the zeros, there was a big question, and Michael Taylor Judd was around with the Monorail Authority. There was a big question about whether we should build light rail. Should we build monorail instead? Should we do all buses? Sound Transit, with much lower sums of money, was on the verge of not getting launched. But when Sound Transit passed in 2008, I more or less took the posture in the newspaper that, okay, the voters know this is a big struggle and still approved it. I'm gonna go with the will of the voters and evaluate Sound Transit on whether they A, deliver on what they promise, and B, and how much service they actually provide. So a number like 264,000, the way to get that down, or one way to get that down in much of the world, is to boost the ridership. The more ridership you have, if you have twice as much ridership, that's 132,000 or whatever the capital cost per user. And I'll have to get with Martin and review his numbers again, but the capital costs are very high per user here. There's no question about it. And you can lower your costs, or you can have more users, or you can cancel the lines and do something else. And there's no haven't seen much, if any, political push to turn back Sound Transit 3. What really gets politically, what prevents obstacles to Sound Transit 3 are when people are outraged over their car tab tax bills, or if somebody suggests demolishing a Dick's restaurant on Pacific Highway South. But those are things that can harm Sound Transit. Most communities don't care that much how much Sound Transit is going to pay if they're getting the service. But communities who aren't getting much service, and there are huge vast of the county, like Renton Highlands, portions of Eastern Kent, Woodinville, who are getting only a little bit or no service anytime soon. And if you sent the ballot their way, it would be highly negative. Hi, Deb. Your thumbs are going down.
No, that's what I maintain that the suburban cities around the Seattle are they've never liked Seattle and they don't want Seattle to get all the attention. So under sound transit parameters, just experienced that personally. So
Well,
Well, we should
right, they would all turn it down.
we should probably use that as a nice bridge to turn to our guests from Sound Transit and talk about find out how they're working to deliver to us and increase ridership. And I know you need to start getting ready for some other things that you're off to do tomorrow, Mike. So we should all thank Mike for being here.
And Mike,
It's
thank
always-
you for the article focus on West Seattle and D1. That was
Well,
really appreciated.
Well, I've lived here 36 years over 6 different decades, so I said some things in there that I wouldn't feel emboldened enough to say about ballot, for instance. But the point is, you know, get something for what you're doing. Don't just toss money around and stress people out with countless night meetings if you're not going to provide superior service to a superior number of people. And that sounds biased, but you have to have some benchmark, and that's sort of where things are at. Thanks a lot. Great to be here, and I'll probably check out the first few minutes of Sound Transit's update here too.
Ready, thanks. With that, I will get us back over here for a moment. And we will move on to our second, our group of guests for the evening. And this will be a lengthy amount of time for a conversation with Sound Transit. As I said, about West Seattle Link extension planning, what you missed last month if you couldn't make it to the community meeting. We have with us tonight Jason Hampton, High Capacity Development Manager for the Link extension, who's been with us before. Sloan Dawson, Land Use Planning Manager, who I don't actually remember. I'm pretty sure Sloan has got to have been with us at some point since he's been on this project, I think as long as we've all been around as a coalition. Lita, of course, has been with us many times, who's a government and community affairs person on the Central Corridor. They're also joined this evening by Nicole Kistler, who's a strategic advisor with the Seattle Department of Transportation. If you want more information, you can always go to soundtransit.org under system expansion and get all the information you could possibly want to know about the West Seattle Link extension. And with that, I will turn it over to our guests to
thank you, Michael.
talk, share, whatever it is you have to do for us tonight.
Great. Well, while I'm talking, Cecilia, if you can see if you've got the ability to share screens. Thank you for that introduction and the time tonight, and all of this focus on transit in West Seattle. We are here to talk with you about station planning in particular. I'm going to start by giving you, Michael, Cecilia Gunn needs access to be able to share her screen. Sorry, she's also with us and is one of our consultants on our engagement side. If you are able to do that, that'd be great. Okay, so as I was saying, I'm going to just start with just a little bit of context on where we are in the planning timeline and the project timeline, and the engagement activity that we are hoping to hear from you all on tonight. And then also we have a complimentary survey, and then I'm going to hand it over to Nicole Kistler from the City of Seattle to talk a bit about the city's role and our really close partnership. Our agency partnerships are really important for this work. And then over to Sloan on the station designs. And we do hope to have this be to have space for discussion. So we'll pause as we go along. And if you have thoughts as we go along, please do put them in the chat and I'll find the right natural pause points to ask for a little bit of discussion. Okay, so next slide. Thank you. All right, so the planning timeline for West Seattle Link Extension, we are still in the planning phase. We will be through the middle of next year is what we're anticipating when we'll publish the final environmental impact statement for this project. And then the board will select a project to be built. And then we'll enter into design from 2024 to 2027 and construction from 2027 to 2032 with start of service in West Seattle projected at 2032. Next slide. So this is a zoom in on the planning phase. I mentioned a little bit just a moment ago. We had published a draft EIS in early 2022. We had a public comment period. The board confirmed, they modified the preferred alternative, gave us that direction. The team is currently working on preparing a final EIS document. We won't have new information on that tonight, but we have also, in parallel with that process, been advancing design on the stations for the preferred alternative. And so you will get to see those tonight. We expect to publish, as I mentioned, the final EIS middle of next year, approximately, and get that final decision on the project to be built. And the federal record of decision follows that. Next. That allows us to go into design. So just a reminder of all the alternatives that are going to be in that final EIS. Well, that pink line that you see there is the preferred alternative and will be the focus for our station planning diagrams for tonight and the feedback that we are collecting as we advance design on that preferred alternative. All of the alternatives will be in the final environmental impact statement that will go to the board, and in the middle of next year, they will tell us what the project we built is based on that updated information. So we'll have that here. Next slide. So on station planning, which is our focus for right now, we are currently, we recently had an open house, and we in October, we also have the information online and have a survey as well. We are sharing updated station design progress for SODO, for Delridge, Avalon, and Alaska Junction stations. So all 4 stations of the West Seattle Link Extension. We're asking for community feedback on concepts for access, urban design, transit-oriented development at the stations. And that input is going to help us advance a design for station areas in collaboration with the City of Seattle and other agency partners. Our hope is to be able to come back to you earlier in the new year with updates for you all. We'll have dates for that, probably early in the new year. Okay, next slide. So I'm going to just speak a little bit about how the city and Sound Transit are working together really on the Sound Transit side, and then I'm going to actually hand it to our city partner to talk more about the city role and dig into that. But of course, as you probably know well now, we at Sound Transit, we plan the routes and station locations, the light rail guideway. We oversee the station design and conduct the environmental review process in partnership with the city. We work on planning the stations with communities and centering racial equity. And then Nicole, I'm going to offer that we could just go to the next slide because I think you have quite a bit more on the city's role on that slide. So let's go to the next slide. And Nicole, do you want to try to speak to this one?
Yep. Hi, everybody. I'm Nicole Kistler. I'm the engagement lead for the West Seattle and Ballard Link Extensions projects at SDOT. And so we're doing several things in partnership with Sound Transit. We work to streamline the process and make it able to be delivered as soon as possible. And we also review and regulate, the things that apply to our codes. So, in order to do that, we are currently gathering feedback on design guidelines, and I'll go into that. But as you can see from this diagram that I think is kind of helpful, Sound Transit builds the station and then obviously helps to support how everybody gets to the station. So that area just around the station, and then the city and Sound Transit work together in that area. And then it's also the city's responsibility to really, facilitate more housing and help create a vision around that we do with community. And so we worked with Sound Transit on developing a survey together. So if you haven't taken that survey, please do that. And then also if you have concerns about the city's role on the project, you're always welcome to reach out to me, and I monitor the website that is at the bottom of this slide. If you could go to the next slide, please. Some of the things we're asking today is what is most important about station design? So is it easy to navigate? Is it welcoming? Is it safe and vibrant? Does it have convenient features? Does it reflect unique community character, and are there spaces for community? And I think within those, we're interested to know like more specifics. So if you have something specific that that you'd like to add in the chat, I'd love to see that. And then we have some on the next page, we have some more questions that I'm going to actually dig into a little bit. So when you've visited light rail stations and other places, are there things you liked or what could be improved? And I'm going to take a minute to ask if there's any feedback that you want to give me right now, besides like you can put it in the chat, or if there's things that you really like in other stations. I'd love to hear from folks.
Yeah, and I'm just looking.
Food.
I see food. And if there are any hands, this is just a nice thing to be thinking about as we like go into the slides around the station design too. I also see bathrooms.
Mm-hmm.
Thank you. All right, keep thinking.
And then I'll go ahead and go to the next slide while folks are thinking. You're welcome to add whatever you'd like. But what aspects of your neighborhood character should be reflected in the design? So is there something specific to, West Seattle that you would particularly like? I don't know. Our Seattle Design Commission recently hosted an Indigenous, a presentation about Indigenous culture in design. And so it's something that if you're enthusiastic about transit, you might look at that. You might see what they had somebody come from Auckland, New Zealand. So that's really interesting. But if there are other characteristics of West Seattle, you think, see somebody added,
yeah,
they'd like to see room for local small businesses and restaurants. So that's great. Thanks.
Mhm.
And then also, what is your vision for the area around the station? So I know you all have thought a lot about transit in this space, and I'd be really interested to know if there's something more besides local small businesses and restaurants, which would definitely be something. Deb says she'd like to see someone in the service window, and she likes lighting and decent maps. I think that's great. So Deb, are you saying that you'd like to see someone in the service window because you'd like somebody monitoring the station, or somebody to ask questions to about route or fare information? Is that?
I think it's helpful for users to have someone, a go-to person, and it's great having your fellow riders help you out. But I know when I see somebody and I'm in the DC Metro and there's someone in the booth, I don't feel as stupid anymore.
Yeah, that's really helpful. Thank you. And then could we go to our next slide, please? Then we have some specific questions we're interested in knowing about bike and scooter parking at the station. So if there are some things that would make you more likely to park your bike or scooter at the station, like more secure facilities, locating the bike or scooter parking near the station entrance, or locating it close to your route, or providing a place to charge like an electric bike or scooter, or a space large enough for like a big bike, like a cargo bike, or one with a child seat or a trailer. And Kate says, as someone who gets all turned around in many current stations, good wayfinding is nice to have near the right exit. I agree. Kate, do you have thoughts about bike parking? Like what might make it easier?
Well, I will say I have a like a mini cargo bike. It's bike size, but it can carry a lot. And I usually have it equipped with bags and milk crates. And I cannot fit it in the current lockers at the Soto station right now with the milk crates on, and I could barely fit it even with like a standard rack and bags. So definitely I'm glad that you're looking at larger cargo bikes because mine barely makes it.
So
It seems like a variety of parking, uncovered racks for quick jaunts and good secured rooms or large lockers for everybody else.
have you used rooms anywhere that you think are really great?
I haven't used any.
Okay. I know there's
Yeah.
one that serves some of the stadiums
Okay.
and it's in the parking garage, but it
Yep.
also has security, and I know folks that have used it who've thought it was really fantastic. So if
Me
you
too.
find
Yeah.
one that you think is really great, I'd be interested to hear about it.
Yeah, I know
even
people who
outside
recommend
the-
the one at the stadiums too. So yeah, it must
Okay.
be a good one.
Yeah. Well, and heavily used because a lot of people are going there.
Yeah.
Okay, could you go to the next slide, please? And then on that room topic, what type of bike or scooter parking would you prefer? So I was hearing a variety of things, not just one thing, but lots of choices for people. Did I get that right?
I think choices are good. Because,
Okay.
people are going to use those racks, like a quick rack, potentially just to run into a convenience store. They might not even be taking the train.
Yeah, that's true. That's true. That's great. Well, thank you all for the feedback. We also on the survey have some specific questions related to our station access planning. And so if you haven't taken the survey, I really encourage you to go ahead and do that. It really helps our teams understand what folks want. And so that'd be great. And then if there's anything that you have further questions about, or you I know Michael, folks are quiet, but if you want to talk more with city staff about an issue, please reach out to me. I'm always happy to talk with folks. And I live in West Seattle, so I'm especially excited about having light rail accessible in the future. So thanks. I hand it back to you, Lita.
Thanks, Nicole. Let's go to Sloan. We're going to start walking through the stations. And as we go through the stations, I think Sloan's going to pause and we're going to have conversation about each one and maybe ask some questions and try to generate a little dialogue. So go ahead, Sloan. Over to you.
Great. Well, thank you everyone for having us this evening. We're really happy to be here and talking with you about our progress on planning the stations and station environment around the preferred alternative in the West Seattle Link extension. So we're going to sort of follow a typical progression of diagrams that are sort of organized thematically. So we're going to model it with Delridge, and then we'll walk through the other stations too. And as Lita mentioned, we'll pause sort of at each section so we can talk about each station area as a unique place. So the first slide that's on the screen currently is sort of an overview of the station concept. It's showing some of the key features of the overall site plan, including how curb space is used between different modes of transportation, so how people are getting onto the station site. And it's also pointing out the station entrance location and giving you a sense of the massing of the station. Delridge is an elevated station, And so this is the first station in West Seattle as the guideway is transitioning from Soto and across the Duwamish River. This particular view on the lower left hand of the slide is a map that shows the location of the view. It's a view looking to the northeast, and it's a sort of tilted oblique view, so you can get a sense of the topography as well as the surrounding existing buildings in the station environment. So the station at Delridge is about 55 feet above the Charlestown Street grade. One of the things I think everyone knows about this site adjacent to Nucor Steel and the on-ramp to the West Seattle Bridge is there's quite a bit of grade as you move east-west. So as you are sort of looking at the center of the image, you can see Andover Street, which defines sort of one of the first big, sort of major streets as you're entering West Seattle. Delridge Way is on the frontage of the station, and that is the principal bus route and bus corridor that the Rapid Ride H line and other routes currently operate on and will continue to be operating on in the future. And then the other north-south streets like 23rd Avenue Southwest up on the north hand or the upper part of the image and 26th Avenue Southwest are helping to provide that larger framework of neighborhood access into the station and from the station into the surrounding neighborhoods. So the station will have two entrances, an entrance that's oriented towards the corner of Andover Street Southwest and Delridge Way Southwest, and then a lower entrance that's oriented to Charlestown Street. A few important things to note. Charlestown Street is different than it is today. Its geometry is pretty substantially, or proposed to be pretty substantially modified in this plan. And that is to create a pathway for buses, a dedicated circulation pathway for buses that are coming northbound from White Center, Delridge Corridor, further south, White Center and Burien, so they can have sort of a dedicated and streamlined access into the station. I'll show in the subsequent slide how that sort of movement works from those entrances up to the platform. But the main idea here is that we're really trying to avoid the conditions that bus riders have had to face elsewhere on the Sound Transit system, particularly Mount Baker. So to avoid forcing passengers to have to cross a busy arterial to get to the station and station entrance. And so we can really create this focal point for bus transfers. There's also bike parking proposed to be adjacent to the station. You can see it's right next to that lower station entrance, as well as a paratransit stop that would be located on Southwest Charleston Street. Pickup drop-off is proposed on Southwest Andover Street. And I would be remiss to not point out the fact that as part of the station development, we are really thinking with the city about how bike access ties into the station and into the surrounding network. So we're showing a pretty generous setback from Andover Street to accommodate a multi-use path that can have sufficient space for cyclists as well as pedestrians. And then transitioning that west of Charlestown Street into essentially two-way cycle track that can then tie into the neighborhood greenway on 26th Avenue Southwest. Let's go to the next slide, Cecilia. So this slide is showing how you actually, or how a rider would be accessing the station platform from the street. So as I was referencing earlier, the northbound buses that would be pulling into bus bays along Charlestown Street. And then southbound buses that would be stopping on Delridge Way, just north of Andover Street. Those two levels of the station would have access into stairs, elevator, escalator that would come up to the platform. So from Charlestown Street, again, it's about 55 feet from that street level up to the platform. From Delridge Way, there's about a 20-foot grade change, so that's about 35 feet from the Delridge Way grade up to the platform. And there, regardless of which of those levels folks are coming into, they're essentially meeting at a concourse at the Delridge Way level, and then would have a common vertical circulation pathway up to the platform. I see there's a question which I will get to in just a moment. I'm going to ask Cecilia to go to the next slide. And this slide now is showing concepts for potential development adjacent to the station that could be delivered in tandem with station construction on property that has to be acquired to build and operate the station. So this is showing that frontage of Delridge Way with a pretty substantial TOD opportunity that could be divided into at least 2 buildings, perhaps more. The massing concept that's shown here of 85-foot height is sort of it's based on the current zoning, manufacturing, maritime manufacturing and logistics zone allows up to 85-foot height. We'd have to be working, of course, in tandem with the community, with the city, to define a development program that could occur within that zoning or within other zoning that might be applied to the site in the future. But the main idea here is that it's right next to the station. There's an opportunity to tie that development directly into the station and to take advantage of the change in elevation from Delridge Way to Charlestown Street to also create space for logistics and other uses sort of below that development. And the other sort of key opportunity to note here is a potential public plaza that would be really sort of supporting that pathway, that access pathway from the south, from the neighborhood into the station entrance, and sort of create an opportunity for retail, businesses, other things that help to activate that space right on that pathway. So it's sort of following that principle of eyes on the path and creating places where folks can get their daily needs met as a function of their actual travel and transportation through the city. We're also showing a small kiosk that could be built on that plaza, potentially above the bicycle storage and other uses that would be happening sort of below it in support of the station facilities. That could also be a space for small scale retail, potentially for community gathering. And we have a whole question about that on the survey. And so that would be actually one great thing that we'd like to chat with you all about and hear your thoughts on this evening about what kinds of things you'd like to see happen in that plaza, the kinds of programming activities that you'd like to see there, because that really does influence how we start to think about the design and the pathways of approach into the station. So that's sort of the quick overview. There's a couple of questions. Maybe Liz, if you, I'm just reading your, do you mean putting in a sidewalk there on the new core side of Andover? Yes, so essentially what we would be doing is both a sidewalk as well as a two-way cycle track. And if we go to the first image, Cecilia, on slide 9, you can see that a little bit clearer. The yellow indicates sidewalk, the green indicates a two-way cycle track. And the idea is as you're sort of moving towards the station, towards where you have a lot of different activities, a lot of different users sort of starting to interact with one another, to start to transition that behavior. So people are sort of primed to share the space. So you can see what we're thinking potentially is bike lanes on 26th Avenue Southwest, transitioning to that two-way cycle track and mixing zone at the Charlestown Street entrance or Charlestown Street intersection. And then as you cross Charlestown Street, you have a wide, generous area with perhaps pavement delineation of space for bikes, but you don't have that same sort of separation given the sheer number of users interacting in that space.
I see
Deb,
Deb has a couple questions. Deb, do you want to just verbalize your question?
Sure.
Yes, the new core access.
Yeah.
I've thrown a couple things in here. What did I say? Add your street names. Which one is Delridge? Which one is Andover?
Yeah,
Got 23rd, but keep adding them.
that was a mistake actually, just on this image I caught, right?
Yeah.
It's like, I apologize. The other images, yeah, if you go there.
I
they have the
suggest
labels.
identifying your existing and, more importantly, proposed signalized intersections, just to see where because you are proposing some new driveways onto Delridge, and you've depicted crosswalks, but I think more importantly than showing a crosswalk is if it's at a signal, because it's insane out there right now. And
Yes.
so I think it's important to identify that. How tall, you indicated the 85-foot for the TOD potential area. How tall is the station area in this point? I can't remember.
55 feet above the Delridge, I'm sorry, above the
55,
Charlestown
okay,
Street,
okay.
above the Charlestown Street grade. So
Okay,
when
so
you're at Delridge, you're about 35.
so an 85-foot TOD would sit above the station area.
Correct.
Okay. Also key, I think, for people to be able to comment on this, because people have in their brains that the semi trucks come out of Newcore at Andover and
Yes.
hang a left and then a left. And so I think one thing that you really need to depict, and I don't know how you're going to do that, but is how Newcore access will or will not be occurring in these same areas as it is currently, or are they going to have a new access route? Does that make sense to you?
Yeah, absolutely. And there's actually, Cecilia, I'm gonna just quickly take the screen from you just to show that we do have other materials. We find that sometimes the three-dimensional views are really great to just communicate certain things, but we have oh, I don't know that I can actually share my screen.
You may need Michael to share the screen with you. I'm really glad to see the level of detail on this. And the snarky part of me wanted to say, oh, be sure and label the junkie house on the east side of Delridge to see if that's, proposed to be incorporated into this, but I decided to let that go.
Okay.
But there's so much detail,
Yes.
That's where I was coming from with the new course access, the new core component.
So this will hopefully address those questions for you, because you can also see the signal plan that's proposed. So of course, there's so this is now a plan view. We're looking just like from above, right? North is pointing up. So there's of course the existing light signal at Delridge and Andover. Based on the analysis thus far, we're not really seeing a warrant for a signal on 26th and Andover. But because we are proposing a reconfiguration of Charlestown Street and the new core access function, that's now utilizing a new intersection that would be created at Delridge Way, roughly where 23rd ties in. So you essentially create like a four-legged intersection there. And that would introduce a new signal.
Okay, good.
Essentially, that would control traffic in all directions. So the brown arrow here.
I can't see them. I don't see what you go slower.
Let me zoom in and actually let me highlight. So this, oh no, I want that to be, I want to be yellow. And I want it to be there.
Okay.
Okay. Oh. So
I love computers. Okay.
yeah. So
That's
so
the new
essentially
core.
so that's the new core access. Currently the trucks come out
Yeah.
as you know, they come out this way.
Oh, man.
And that is instead, that will become the new sort of transit pathway. So
Right.
effectively, new core vehicles will both enter and exit the site via this new signal. It's probably going to require, some, modifications to the roadway geometry to accommodate the turning movements of semi vehicles into the new core site. But we've run the auto turn analysis, and it's supporting the fact that this could work. It's tight. All
Yeah.
movements are tight, but it's no tighter than the current pattern. So this provides a dedicated pathway into new core and out of new core. And then there's a leg of this where buses could be sort of interacting with new core vehicles, as well as what maybe you can't see as clearly is this little purple line that's showing access into the TOD site. So there's
Really? Whoa, yeah, okay, got it.
So there's this sort of green area that's been held as space that can be landscaped, it can be stormwater solutions, etc. And that having sort of a road, we call it the split bean because it looks like a bean.
Yeah,
it's
it does,
split into
okay.
two. So
maybe even just with those the diagrams that you shared with us, just have a note about see page XYZ for details about.
It's a good note. We'll make sure that we update the symbology so people can track, and we'll also be developing as the design progresses. We'll have more sort of advanced diagrams as well. Cecilia, would you like to
Thank you.
Share? So I am curious before we move on to Avalon and Alaska Junction, if we go to the sort of next slide, Cecilia, it'd be great just to hear if there are ideas, really, I guess some of you have shared already in the chat what you'd like to see, things like childcare, things like space for small local businesses, which can certainly be the a priority of how we manage the development partnering process on the site. But particularly on that public plaza, are there certain sort of uses or activities like seating versus landscaping, like what sorts of things would you like to see there?
Since no one's saying anything, I'm going to jump in. This is Deb. I remember when I was on the design review board, Southwest Design Review Board, and we had this awesome new building going up with some perfect south facing exposure, and the entire board said, oh, great, coffee shop, outdoor seating, perfect. That's what needs to be there. And then the leasee who took over that spot is a chiropractor. And they don't care about outside stuff. So that's my comment here. It's south facing. It'll be noisy, but it'll be delightful for occupancy. But whatever is going on there needs to have a relationship with the building that it's adjacent to.
Yep. Good. Great feedback. Thank you. Yeah, it'd be interesting to see if there's any like tables that can be modified for chiropractic work.
Yeah, I
know. Somehow I don't think that that's a filter and like the landscape furnishings business.
I know.
I feel like it should be one though.
It's hard to impose that sort of stuff on a chiropractic office.
On plein air. Yeah. So Liz says, I'd love to see space for live music. That's great. So sort of performance space and some kind of water feature to tie in. That's great. Do you want to say anything more about that, Liz?
No, I was just thinking about, this will be taking away probably Skylark, which is a music venue that we have in the neighborhood. So just to kind of give a gesture to some of the stuff we would be losing with this development, like stuff like space for buskers and stuff like that. I think would be great.
ST has just been sponsoring buskers actually in Westlake, and there's a whole program around that. So it's a great sort of linkage to explore here.
Yeah, we are currently piloting, which is exciting.
Awesome. Well,
like
Yeah,
Phil
so-
has a hand up.
Oh.
I was also going to say, Sloan, I think one of the struggles for the neighborhood, putting my old neighborhood council hat on where we were for years, is, the neighborhood plan always looked at this as a business node, and supporting the businesses that were currently there. And really around Genesee and Youngstown and the skate park and the community center as more of the like active community cultural space. And so I think it's just hard, like without being able to envision what this will actually look when it's built. I think it's hard for neighbors in North Delridge to really imagine what it looks like for, as also a public space and a residential space and not just a business space.
Understood. So I think part of why we're asking the questions, just to see what people share, particularly if there are precedents or places that you've been, like, I think we really want to, lean into sort of starting to like visualize what those things could look like. So folks could really understand what role the station and the station area, station environment could play in the community. So we're that's one of the things that we want to be sure to bring back, some ideas to sort of continue that conversation and get a little bit more energy building around what could happen in these spaces. Food truck space.
Yeah, food truck space from Michael as well.
Is it okay if I invite Phil to unmute and ask his question? I just see him flagging his hand in the air.
Sure. I can't seem to see people's video. I'm not sure. I see like participant list and chat and the other, but anyway, sorry. Yes, go ahead.
Hi, this is Phil. So when the riders get off of the Sound Transit, where are the bus stops? And if I pick them up by car, how do I do that?
So if we're back at this, so essentially there are the blue spots show the transit stops. So
okay,
all the buses are going northbound and southbound, essentially on Delridge Way, past the station. And so northbound buses, what we've done is worked with Metro to create a pathway where buses would turn left. There'd be some level of signal preemption and further downstream as well to help support this movement, but they would be turning left onto Andover, turning right onto Charlestown Street. They would be dropping curbside, sort of where that blue icon is, where the cursor currently is, as Cecilia is showing us. Thank you, Cecilia. And then the buses would continue on that drive out to the new signalized intersection with Delridge and turn left. And from there, they would both be able to go onto the West Seattle High Bridge via the current, sort of slip lane on-ramp thing, or they'd be able to go north to West Marginal, which in the future, Metro is planning to adjust the Rapid Ride H routing once Ballard Link opens. So that route could go on into the Admiral District in Alki.
Thank you.
Southbound buses would be stopping just on Delridge, so there'd be no sort of circulation there. They'd just be stopping on Delridge, and then folks would walk through the the plaza and sort of the TOD frontage to get to the station access point. Pickup drop-off is on Andover Street. So that's shown there in the purple.
Thank you.
Okay. I see another comment from Deb. Thank you. Are we ready to go?
Yeah, I think if we go onto Avalon Station. Okay, so Avalon Station, just up the hill from Delridge. This station has a little bit of a different configuration, quite a different one actually. It's what we call a retained cut station. You know, probably in the existing system, the best example of a retained cut is the yet to open Spring District 120 station. You could argue maybe the International District Chinatown station is retained cut, but the idea is that it's not a full tunnel, it's not fully enclosed, and it's as a result quite shallow in depth. So this particular station is 35 feet below street grade. It's transitioning from an elevated guideway around, you know, just west of Avalon Way and 32nd Avenue Southwest, and essentially transitions to grade, and then this sort of retained cut condition coming into the Avalon Station. The view on the image that we're looking at is to the northwest. So the platform is located parallel to Fauntleroy Way and the West Seattle Bridge, straddling 35th Avenue Southwest. There are two entrances. One, as Michael points out in the chat, the Taco Time station, so that's in the current Taco Time parcel, that triangle defined by Fauntleroy, 35th, and Avalon Way. And then there's another entrance east of 35th that is sort of right at that the intersection that constitutes the on-ramp to the West Seattle Bridge, coming from 35th and from the junction. There are several bus routes that are traversing through the station area. Probably the highest volume bus routes are going to be operating on 35th Avenue Southwest, so they're going to be serving neighborhoods like High Point, and they will have direct curbside access to both station entrances in both directions of travel, northbound and southbound. So it'll be very seamless transit integration there. There are also buses that are heading up the Fauntleroy corridor and the Route 50 that currently goes from from this area down and over into Sodo. It stops at several stations along the way, so it's not going to be a high transfer volume at this particular location, but there are bus stops along Avalon Way that support the access to the station. There's a lot of planned bike infrastructure in the area. So there's a neighborhood greenway with upgraded facilities that will be delivered in concert with new development on that corridor. That ties in essentially directly with the West Station entrance, just on the other side of Avalon Way, as well as existing bike lanes on Avalon Way that go all the way down the hill and to Alki Beach and other locations. And then, of course, Fauntleroy Way, which has a long-standing plan by SDOT, as you all know, and was put on hold while this project was being developed, just to understand what the interface would be between the two. So that will also feature upgraded sidewalks and cycling facilities. So that informed the placement of the bike parking for this station in the triangle. where Taco Time currently is and where the future West Station entrance will be located. I'm trying to think if there are other things to point out here on this particular diagram. I guess one thing to point out, pickup, drop off, and paratransit. So sort of more on the east side of 35th Avenue. We're proposing that Genesee Street essentially, it currently sort of intersects on a kind of a dogleg condition in 35th Avenue and the West Seattle Bridge. Instead, we'd be proposing to route it south to Southwest Avalon Way. That would provide a path for pickup drop-off vehicles as well as paratransit vehicles to have direct curbside access to the station. And then noting through that new sort of circulation infrastructure and construction staging, there's some opportunities for smaller scale TOD in that general vicinity. If we go to the next slide, this is just showing how you get down to the station platform again. Same view as before, sort of oblique looking northwest. It's really straightforward. There are no mezzanines or concourses. You just drop directly from the station entrance down to the platform about 35 feet below grade. Of course, everything would be weather protected in the portion that would be sort of open cut. So very simple way to access the station. And if we go to the next slide, this is showing the different potential TOD sites that could accompany the station construction, owing to properties that would have to be acquired to build the station. So a number of smaller scale, probably mixed use residential buildings on the east side of 35th, sort of framing the circulating street on Genesee. And then on the west side of Fauntleroy Way, potentially larger scale mixed use development, residential, commercial mixed use development that would essentially be directly across Fauntleroy from the west entrance. And again, on this image, we're showing not specific building forms. These aren't designed buildings. We're just sort of showing the zoning envelope just to give a sense of the massing and the height based on the current zoning that's in place, and or zoning that could be expanded from adjacent zoning districts. And then we're also showing street level businesses and services. So where we would propose to really focus on cultivating active street frontages around the station itself. So that's the overview of Avalon. Perhaps I can jump back to the chat and see some of the questions. Big question from Deb: should the Starbucks drive-through be replaced on site? Are you serious, Deb?
I'm tongue in cheek, plus I'm a stockholder. I'm sure that's what everyone's gonna say. Oh my God, where's the drive?
I mean, walk through.
No, don't answer that. Don't answer that.
And maybe you want to talk about your second.
Okay, so heads up, the Alki Lumber site, which is adjacent to the Habitat Burger, and then also continues across 36th Avenue Southwest. That whole, it's like a block split by a street. That has approval for, I want to say, 7 stories of very large apartment. So it might be useful to show the progression of the neighborhood, to sketch that in or lightly line that in. Maybe you have it on something else, just to show the morphing of the smaller unit spaces into larger spaces. What was the other thing I did? And they do have, they're pretty far down the design approval track. So I think they're just waiting for the economy to do something more than it has.
Yep, I'm aware. I've seen the plans, certainly, and that's good feedback.
The other thing,
struggling.
Is
go ahead.
your signalized intersections important again to identify or to say, no, there won't be a signal here? And I'm looking at that because of the pedestrian connectivity. Eventually it will become very dense. It'll be denser on the north side of Fauntleroy, and showing how all of that connectivity will be facilitated across Fauntleroy as well as Alaska. But Fauntleroy is still, until it gets until the boulevard goes in and lanes get reduced, it still is a big, huge barrier.
Yep. Understood. And yes, when it comes to signals, really nothing is changing. Like all of the intersections that are currently signalized will remain signalized. We're not proposing new signals anywhere in this plan. Even that sort of Genesee Street sort of curving thing, that's going to be a right in, right out sort of stop sign controlled intersection with Avalon Way. So point well taken on, again, showing those existing versus proposed signals here. And on sort of the street, thinking about the street concepts, I know that the city is currently really starting to reevaluate those plans for Fauntleroy Way in light of the station location here. And I believe that the intent is, when we re-engage with some of the findings from this current round of engagement next year, that there will be some concepts, more sort of discrete concepts on how some of these streets lay out. So you'll be able to see like lanes and configurations and such.
Right. They turned off the review and design process on this corridor once they realized, oh, there's a big train coming. So
yes, exactly. Yep.
Thank you.
See, Michael's got a question.
And Michael's question, yes, about Chinatown International District Station, and is the platform access comparable? And the answer to that is yes, it's very comparable. That's, I think, probably a good reference point in the existing system for that access condition.
Okay.
Okay. Well, just looking at the time, we should probably just go ahead and ride the train one more station down to Alaska Junction. And here we're now looking to the southeast. So the camera of the oblique angle is positioned, essentially hovering over California and looking towards the station site. The station is proposed to essentially, it's a tunnel station. It's underneath 41st Avenue Southwest. So it's right between California and Fauntleroy, sort of 2 blocks from each location. And part of the refinement to the design strategy for the station is to try to have entrances that sort of orient and bring the rider a little bit closer to those 2 major streets and their associated services and destinations and so forth. So there's a north entrance on the north side of Alaska Street that is oriented to 40th Avenue Southwest, so a block away from Fauntleroy. There's a south entrance on the Jefferson Square development site that's oriented to the west on 42nd Avenue Southwest, so a block away from California. So we're trying to achieve sort of the best of multiple alternatives that we were looking at in past years, past phases of this project. It's you'll see how this functions below grade here shortly, but we're thinking that it sort of sets up a good neighborhood access framework. We've also been seeing that there's a lot of opportunities for sort of connecting into the neighborhood greenway facilities on 42nd Avenue Southwest, for instance, the bicycle lanes on Fauntleroy Way, and also planned park facilities on 40th Avenue Southwest and essentially between Alaska Street and Edmund Street. So we're sort of setting up that framework for that larger station area with this. The bus routes, so all of the buses that are serving Alaska Junction Station will be routed along Alaska Street. So they'll be coming from the west on California, well, coming from the south in California and from the north, and then turning west, turning east. And then they're coming from the east, from 35th, from Fauntleroy, and stopping on Alaska, essentially in front of the North Station entrance head house there, and then turning onto California to go on. So all of the routes, eastbound will be the south entrance, westbound will be the north entrance. So I think someone pointed out earlier about wayfinding sort of within the station, sort of being clear about if you're going westbound, you want to get off on this entrance. If you're going eastbound, at this entrance. We'll have bicycle storage at both station entrances. There'll be pickup and drop off proposed on 41st and 40th, as well as paratransit on 40th. And we're also showing bike lanes, protected bike lanes on both sides of Alaska Street. So, this is one thing the city is working on, is thinking about the extending that potential treatment of protected bike facilities beyond this particular focused station area and all along the Alaska corridor. Maybe if we go to the next slide. The next slide shows what's going on to get down to the station platform. So the platform, again, is shown in blue. That platform is about 65 feet below the street grade. At this point, there's a concourse above the platform that sort of helps people to wayfind. So when I was saying earlier about signage that would help identify where people go to catch their buses, that concourse level will be sort of a point where that wayfinding can really help direct people's journey through the station. And then there would be continuous run escalators and stairs, and then of course also elevators that would tie into the entrance lobbies oriented again west to 42nd Avenue and east to 40th Avenue. So that's sort of the configuration within the station, how folks would get to from the street level at 42nd and 40th down to the station platform. We go to the next slide. This is showing again, the sort of the massing concepts based on current zoning for how development could be integrated above the station entrance head houses as well as sort of on adjacent property. So the boxes are indicating, again, property that Zone Transit would be looking to acquire to build the station and to site the supporting facilities. We are seeing a substantial potential for TOD sort of right here in the heart of the junction. With that potential, of course, for active ground floor uses that sort of help to activate the station area and also, provide a commerce and activity for the neighborhood, as well as, given the zoning here, a significant opportunity for housing as well, that could be integrated into this potential development. So, again, on the survey, we asked some questions about specifically what the community would like to see. Of course, if you haven't taken the survey, we highly encourage you to do that because there's a lot of information, a lot that we sort of put out there that we'd like to hear from you on, and of course development and how we shape the character of these developments is pretty high on that list. So with that, questions, comments? I see there's a lot of chat.
There's a lot of chat going on, Sloan. Does anyone want to vocalize any of that? I know we got like 7 minutes before the scheduled end of the meeting. Kate, you mentioned something about the transfers for buses at the station.
Yeah, it just seems like at all the stations, they're pretty direct and quick. So thank you for that.
It's been a
Michael?
major focus of
Yeah.
our team. Like we just were like, we
And-
have to get the bus transfers right.
And working with King County Metro, right?
Exactly. Yeah. Critical.
Michael and John both maybe seem to have comments about Jefferson Square and parking lots.
Yeah, it sounds like everybody is in favor of redeveloping that block. Deb, you've got some questions about the bus bay.
So Sloan, you know about the bus bay that's just immediately west of California on Alaska? Is that the sort of bus bay that's envisioned for this for the seaside?
Yeah, so it'll essentially be a curb. If we go back to that first slide, Cecilia, slide 17. Yeah, so essentially what you'll see is a similar condition. You'll have some bus shelters and or canopies that would be attached to TOD with lean rails. And then the curb, that whole stretch of curb would be designated for buses. Buses wouldn't be laying over there. They would just be picking up and dropping off there.
Okay. And then I just had a comment about the underground concourses. Having been in some underground concourses throughout the world, and some are, I remember some in Paris, it's like, oh my God, I hope this goes someplace. And so I just wanted to put in a big shout out for what the atmosphere of those spaces are, making it safe, bright, populated, homey, safe, and make sense to users and non-users, among other things.
Love that.
We have one more question about all the designs in general. It's great to see the designs for the preferred alignment. What happens if a non-preferred alignment is ultimately chosen? Is there more outreach? Are those designs around for viewing? Just, I could see it's too complicated to throw all of them at us in one meeting.
So, and there might be others from the team that are better positioned to take that, maybe. Yeah.
Sure. Well, so I think, and Sloan, you can add to this. So for the purposes of the final, and this phase that we're in right now, we are trying to work on. We have all of the alternatives, of course, in our final EIS. The preferred alternative, however, is getting advanced work in order to catch us up to a place where when we get to final design, we get to jump right in. So if there, if the Jason, you can add this too, if the board were to give us direction on something that modifies what the preferred alternative is, it's kind of a big, it depends in terms of what that looks like in terms of process. There's a lot that we're learning, right, for the preferred alternative as it is. I bet Sloan and Jason, a lot of that could apply in terms of principles of like values and what's important for station access and design and for community and what you'd like to see there. So this is all super valuable input. But certainly there would be some work that has not been done on, if there's changes, right, Jason, that are bigger for that alternative, if it's modified by the board and what's selected to be built. I'm sure that whatever does happen, like in the phases of design advancement, we would be doing engagement. We don't have that now. Is that okay, Jason? Sloan?
I think you said it well. Yeah. I mean, I think the two keys that I would highlight that you said is we've learned a lot. We've gotten a lot of good feedback that's informed these, and that feedback would apply to other stations. And as Lita said, we'd have some more work to do. And it would be a process just like this is.
Yeah. Okay, great. Thanks.
Good question.
We're hoping that,
All
well,
right.
I shouldn't say we're hoping. It's just that we're focusing on what the board designated as the preferred alternative
Yeah.
for the final EIS. And yeah, as Jason and Lita said, if the definition of the project goes a different way, then there will be some catch-up work that we need to do.
Yeah. Okay.
And that makes total sense, you know? I mean, it's a shame, but it makes sense. So,
Do a
Yeah.
thorough job on fewer.
And
I can tell you
designs,
the
right?
process of
Yeah.
of creating even the levels of design that we were for all the alternatives in the draft EIS was like, that was a huge lift. But trying to get to this level of detail, I think there would be riots in certain building floors. I'm kidding.
but the fact that you know the challenge areas or what the issues may or may not be, when you have one area, it's easy to go, oh yeah, remember over there we had to deal with this, still applies over here. So you're kind of ahead of the game
Yeah.
if you have to go look at something else.
Yeah.
Like you could just pick up that whole Delridge station and slide it over a couple blocks and it'd be like, brilliant.
And you don't even have to worry about trucks then.
Exactly.
Well,
And you have your
there was-
relationships.
there was an alternative.
I know.
Alternative.
I know. Anyway.
Yeah, yes. Imagine if there had been someone out there who proposed that whole thing with all the pluses and minuses in the community. And lots of people were like, absolutely not. We love the golf course.
Right. Golf course. Never mind.
I tried. I tried really,
So did
really,
I.
really hard.
I know.
Okay.
Well, I think we have gone through all of our slides, right, Sloan?
Yes. Yep. Basically, all that remains is the survey plug for the
for
survey.
the survey. Yep, through December 20th, which actually we should probably have that on these slides so people know.
Yeah. December 20, that's a good point.
Yeah, December 20th. So there's still a good amount of time, but not it is not ongoing forever. And I put the website in the chat. There's also the link and a QR code here. So we hope that you will take a look and share it out. And if it's helpful for us to share language for you to help you share it out through your networks or anywhere else, we're happy to do that as well.
You're reading my mind, Lita. That was
Yeah.
exactly what I was going to ask you.
Sure, we can get that to you probably tomorrow.
John's still on here with us, who runs our email, but I'm thinking, like, there's so much great images and detail and walking through. Like, this is beyond, I think, what we imagined the meeting would be. And so it'd be really great if you want to share some language for the survey. Maybe we can put out an email to our folks, maybe early next week.
Yeah, that would be great. No, we can
That's
get
like,
you the
hey,
language
here's a link to the
tomorrow, I'm
video,
sure. Yeah,
and here's info about filling out the survey because I really want to get your feedback.
Yeah,
that would be great.
that would be great too. And are you doing these presentations not just to WSTC, but Chamber and Junction Association?
We've
Youngstown and
we've connected with the Chamber and we've been meeting with other organizations. We met with initial conversation with DNDA too recently, and we
who?
On DNDA, and we're working,
DNDA,
we're working on some focus groups with in partnership with our community liaison program. So some in language focus groups for later this fall, and we are totally open to other groups that would like to have us. We would be really interested to do that.
Let me think on some.
Yeah, and please let us know. And there was the meeting, Deb, that I was in, the D1C.
D1CN.
Yeah, that was a great list of folks, and I know there were a couple of folks who specifically mentioned being interested in this, and so we'd love to connect with them too.
We could try and get you in. Oh, this is till December 20. D1CN is technically next week. Let's talk.
Okay, let's talk. That would be great. Thank you. Okay, I know we're over time. Thank you so much.
Okay, it's important.
Yeah.
Thank you.
The survey is live, John, until December 20th. We're meeting with folks a little longer than that too, so we can come to a group and gather feedback like this. I think through the end of December would be fine.
You don't see yourself going into like the 2 weeks into January by any chance?
I mean, I think for a meeting we could potentially
Yeah.
do that, but they're already kind of trying to gather and process the
I
survey data.
know.
Yeah.
I know. Okay. Sorry, Sloan.
Thank you. That's so that we can then come back with updates in a timely way. Yeah. Thank you so much.
Thank you all.
Good night.
Thank you
Have a
very
good
much.
night.
All. Great to see you.
Good night.
Night.
Right. I do not think we had anything left to go over. Is there any new business that anyone needed to bring up?
I have no brain. I don't know.
All right.
Just catching up. I was out of town and then Thanksgiving hit and haven't had time to think.
I've been out of the
Yeah.
country, so.
When did you get back, Deb?
I'm gonna
Monday
stop
night.
the live stream out to Facebook
Okay.
and stop our recording here.
Oh God, I got it. That's right. That was my note to self to dive into those damn plans.